If you want to get a chance to win one Nameless Honor or one Express Supply Pass, definitely make sure to subscribe to the channel. As I'm hitting 1,000 subscribers, I will give away one of either of those items. Probably I want to do that live on stream on twitch.tv/DreGotchaGaming until the release date of Kafka, which is tomorrow already. But realistically, I don't think that we do hit that checkmark until tomorrow. But if we do, I will do that giveaway tomorrow for some reason. If we don't worry, I will delay that giveaway until we do hit the checkmark and reveal further details as we're hitting that 1,000 subscriber checkmark. So with that being said, also definitely make sure to tune in tomorrow because I will still be live on twitch.tv/DreGotchaGaming, as already mentioned, to summon for Kafka on multiple accounts, probably on the accounts of my friends. If you want to, I can also summon for you as a viewer. Just be there and say hi in the chat, and then we can talk about if I will summon for you or not. All right, now with that out of the way, what is up, guys? My name is Ray, and welcome to another Honkai Star Rail video on my channel. So in today's video, we're talking about characters that do work alongside with Kafka. But before we hop into the topic of today's video, I just want to point you guys again to my YouTube short section, which is the content that I'm currently mainly focusing on. I'll literally put out a video there every day, so it would also help me if you support me there. Any support is appreciated. All right, let's get back into the topic. So for the topic of today's video, I will mainly just work with official information since this video will come out before Kafka and Luka releases. I will just work with the information that HoYoverse provided through their Twitter. So we don't have any numbers for Kafka and Luka, which are the characters that I will mention in today, but I'll use prideful.gg, which is pretty much the site that I use for most of my videos. I do think that site is very great for providing official information. I'll mainly use that site because they also don't really work with leaked information. And yeah, it's pretty much in the description of every video. All right, so let's go over Kafka real quick, just to understand why I do mention certain characters in this video. So the main focus is, of course, which characters do work alongside Kafka. And I already did go over her skills already a couple days ago in my video Blade versus Kafka. So I don't want to go into detail that much, but I want to mention the important things that we do have to know about Kafka, because only by that, understanding that, we do understand why we want to use those certain characters that I recommend you guys. All right, so number one is definitely her technique. Immediately attacks all enemies within range. After entering battle, it deals lightning damage to all enemies, and all enemies have a chance to receive the same shock effect as the one from Kafka's ultimate. Basically, Kafka is all about dot. You really want to apply dot as soon as possible with the character, and this is the chance to apply dot before the fight. So just by looking through her crit, I noticed that she is not consistent enough in applying a dot, in my theory. Of course, it could change as she releases. Maybe she is good enough, but just from reading her kit, I do believe that she's not consistent enough in applying a dot, while her whole kit is based around that dot. So this one basically says that she does a follow attack that has a chance to apply dot, but it only applies to one enemy. And it basically also only applies if one of your team members use a basic attack, which not everyone in the team does. And also, you only can do it on one enemy. It will be like very good against boss fights, but like in fights in AoE situations, this one is like more okay-ish. I mean, it's nice to have, but it doesn't change the problem. The skill also don't apply a dot. Oh, they immediately receive additional damage equal to the percentage of their current active dot. Yeah. The problem of that is that the E doesn't apply a dot. It only enhances the dot. So a dot has to be already applied that the E does its full potential damage. Without that, the E is like only a normal AoE damage skill like it is from Serval. Then her ultimate does apply dot, which thankfully is very good. But as we already know, ultimate skill is not a skill that we can use every turn. So yeah, basically, her whole kit based around enhancing dot. So we do need characters that can apply dot. So there are three possible characters, basically all the characters that will be available on her banner. Let's start off with Luka. So they just revealed his skills today, so we want to go over this more detailed, I'll just mention the other characters real quick. So we will talk about Sampo and we will talk about Serval. I don't want to talk about Sampo and Serval too much into detail. I will just mention like the important things, but I will talk about Luka a little bit more detailed because he is the newest character, which doesn't necessarily mean that he is the best addition for Kafka's team. I just want to talk a little bit deeper into him because we do not have official numbers for him, so we have to still speculate on how good he will be. And I wanted to have that video basically out before Kafka releases. Okay, let's start off with his technique. Immediately attacks the enemy after entering battle, deals physical damage to a random single enemy with a chance to inflict a bleed status equal to that inflicted by Luka's skill to that target. Luka then gain additional stack of fighting will. So basically, he can apply a dot to a random enemy. I think this is the most important thing that we get out of his technique. I mean, yeah, it's again not AoE, and also it's on a random enemy, which I don't really like. So his technique is not that relevant, in my opinion. This one just deals physical damage to a single target enemy, so this is also not that relevant. So let's use Enhanced Basic Attack, okay? Consumes 2 stacks of fighting will. First, uses Direct Punch to deal 3 hits, with each hit dealing physical damage to a single enemy target. Then using Rising Uppercut to deal 1 hit, dealing physical damage to a single enemy target. Wait, but his... Oh, okay. But his technique adds a stack of the fighting will, which is, I do think, one part of his passive. And from here we can say he does need 2 stacks of this fighting will basically to use his Enhanced Basic Attack, which probably doubles up his damage. But the problem here is it doesn't apply a dot, as I'm reading this, right? So it doesn't apply a dot. Okay, let's see here for his talent. Maybe this one helps us. After Luka uses his basic attack, Direct Punch, or skill Lacerating Fist, he receives Fighting Will up to 4 stacks. When he has 2 or more stacks of Fighting Will, his basic attack Direct Punch is enhanced to Sky Shatter Fist. Sky Shatter Fist contains 3 hits of Direct Punch and 1 hit of Rising Uppercut. After Rising Uppercut hits a bleeding enemy target, the bleed status will immediately deal damage for 1 time equal to a certain percentage of the original damage to the target. At the start of the battle, Luka will possess 1 stack of Fighting Will. So this is basically only how his passive mechanic works with his multiple attacks. But as I'm reading this, he doesn't apply a dot. I mean, yeah, I think this passive is really good. It's really solid. I don't really have any complaints about it. Besides that, so far we don't have a skill that applies dot. Let's see for his skill. Deals physical damage to a single enemy target. In addition, there is a chance to inflict bleed on them, lasting for several turns. Okay, this is the skill that we're looking for. While bleeding, the enemy will take a certain percentage of their max AP as physical dot at the start of each turn. This damage will not exceed more than a certain percentage of Luka's attack. So for this, we basically only need the numbers. But compared to all other dot reactions in the game, the physical dot reaction, in my opinion, seems to be the most or the strongest one. I'm not 100% sure. But I definitely do think that either bleed or wind shear is the strongest dot in the game, because wind shear is stackable and bleed does deal damage based on the percentage of the enemy HP. For that, of course, we still do need the numbers, but he flatly just applies a dot. Only disadvantage on this is basically that he does it as a single target skill. So Kafka is especially very good in AoE situations. She only has an addition with her technique or her talent that she can apply an follow-up attack that applies just as a single target, but most of her skills deal AoE damage. And in that case, I think that he applies bleed as his dot is very, very good. But the problem for me here is that he does deal single damage, which the other 2 options don't do. Just to talk about that before. Alright, let's take a quick look at his ultimate. Receive a certain number of fighting will stacks with a chance to cause a targeted enemy to receive increased damage for several turns. Luka will then deal physical damage to the target. Okay, for a nihility character, I think that he has very less applications for a dot, because his only application is through his E, which means that we only want to use his E if we want to use him alongside Kafka. And using only E is very skill point inefficient. That means that that character is basically a skill point negative character because we cannot really use basic attacks, but we want to use basic attacks because it works with his talent, but we want to use his skill because we want to apply dot to the enemy. So I think just reading for this for the first time, it kind of conflicts. I could be wrong on some things right now because the character is not out, but my first glance on this character doesn't seem like fixing the problem on a Kafka team, or I don't really see the synergy in a Kafka team to make a team that really works very well. The only thing that he fixes for me is that he can apply a very strong dot, but he doesn't fix like the skill point issue because Kafka pretty much also always want to use his her E, and he pretty much also want to always use his E, but he doesn't provide a very valuable effect on the enemy, in my opinion, because it's only single enemy. So probably maybe it could work for a boss, for a elite boss fight, but that could be like very good, or where this is enough because it is still max HP. But for now, I'm not really convinced for him as the main option. I think he's not the best option out of those three characters. Okay, let's go and talk about Serval. For Serval, as I said, for Serval and for Sampo, I will only mention the most relevant things. And for Serval, it's basically only it's her E, yes, because it has an 80% chance to apply shock for 2 turns, and her ultimate, enemy already shocked, will extend the duration of their shock state by 2 turns. So basically, we have to use her E to basically wait, what is this? Immediately base for all enemies to become shocked for 3 turns. Immediately attacks enemy after entering the deals with 100%. Okay. Basically, her technique also applies shock. I forgot about that, sorry. So we have 2 options to apply shock, which is through her E, which is AoE, but it only has a 80% base chance. So we probably have to maybe add a little bit of effect hit rate so that we can make sure that we do hit that lightning dot through her shock. And also we can use her technique, which I also think this is very, very good, to apply shock. And also basically the skills around that basically enhances the damage for her shock. The only disadvantage that I see in Serval is that she is also Electro, so you don't really have an element coverage if you want to use her. You only do really enhanced lightning damage, which Kafka also already does. And besides that, I think her kit is very solid for that. Even though, as you can see this, if you enhance like the trace, her E basically becomes 100%, which you usually would do. And yeah, the shock also lasts for 2 turns. So basically, you only have to use her E every 2 turns. If you want to apply the dot, usually you always want to use her E because it is the best damage source, because it also does AoE, and her auto attack just does single target damage. But I think it's very reasonable to splash in an auto attack because Kafka is there to enhance the dot, and it lasts for 2 turns, and after 2 turns you can use her E again, so you will be a bit more efficient in your skill point using, and yeah, your ultimate even does increase that damage. So yeah, Kafka is a very solid unit for the team comp. The only disadvantage that I see here is that she is Electro, basically. But besides that, she's very consistent in applying Electro, because as soon as you have this, as soon as you have a little bit of effect hit rate, the lightning dot should be always applied, and it's very easy. It's a very easy application because you only need to press E, and then it lasts for 2 turns, which I do really like. Okay, next dude, Sampo. Next candidate for the Kafka dot squad team. In my opinion, I do think Sampo is the best one. Just by reading like the skills of all 3, in theory, for me, I do think Sampo is the best, because Sampo can apply dot with everything that he does through this. Sampo's attacks have a 65% base chance to inflict wind shear for 3 turns. Also wind shear stacks, which I already mentioned, so you can apply this multiple times. Enemies inflicted with wind shear will take wind dot equal to 57% of Sampo's attack at the beginning of each turn, and wind shear can stack up to 5 times. I do really like that. I mean, he has the lowest base chance on applying his wind shear, but you can do something about that if you just increase your effect hit rate. But every attack that Sampo does have the chance to apply the dot. So his auto attack is E and his ultimate, which is the easiest dot applicator at the game, I'd say. Also, he has element coverage by being a wind character, because it would be 2 elements, so you would cover 2 elements always, which I also think is really, really nice. And besides that, he's a very solid option. So we don't have to talk about this, because this basically just triggers this, but we have to talk about this. Deals wind damage equal to 62% to a single target, and further deals damage 4 extra times, with each time dealing wind damage equal to 62% of Sampo's attack to a random enemy. So we can ignore the 62% times, but this is important. 4 extra times. And he attacks 4 times, and for every attack of those 4 attacks, these 65% do hit. So basically, if you're very, very lucky, with 1E, you can apply wind shear 4 times. You do 4 hits, and every hit can apply the wind shear, which I think is so good, because it's basically guaranteed, even if you don't have that much of effective rate, to apply at least 1 wind shear. And 1 wind shear is enough to, because you really want to have the dot that Kafka can enhance the dot. And therefore, it's basically guaranteed to apply a dot very, very easily. And let's talk about his ultimate. Deals wind damage equal to 170% attack to all enemies, with a 100% base chance to increase the target's dot taken by 32% for 2 turns. So just by nature, his ultimate does not apply the dot, but because of his passive, you have the chance to apply the dot. And also what I really, really do like is that that Sampo does deal AoE with his ultimate. The only problem that I do have with this E is basically that he does it to a random enemy, but you have 4 hits, which I do really like. So you can attack the single enemy. So this is the one that you mainly want to apply the dot. And this is hit number 1. And then you can use the other 4 hits for random enemies to apply dot additionally. So it is not guaranteed to hit every enemy. So all 4 hits could hit that same enemy that you targeted. It also only could hit 2 out of 4 enemies or 3 out of 4 enemies. So this is the RNG factor that we got here. But still, I think it's really good, because with the first attack, you still can choose which character to attack. And with enough effective rate, there will be a very good chance to trigger the wind shear effect for that. And also, wind shear lasts for 3 turns compared to Serval, it only lasts for 2 turns. So yeah. Does his technique help? After he uses technique, enemies in a set area are afflicted with blind for 10 seconds. Blinded enemies cannot detect your team when initiating. Okay, no. What is about here? Extends the duration of wind shear caused by talent by 1 turn. All right. So if you upgrade his A2, you even increase the wind shear for 1 turn, which is really good, because in the next turn, when Sampo attacks, you just can stack up the wind shears, and then you just wait for 4 turns. Enemies with wind shear effect deals 50% less damage, and also he has a damage reduction, which I also think is really good. So, like, overall, his kit is a bit more tailor-made for working alongside with Kafka for me, which I do really, really like. And he has like a more easily dot application, which why out of all those 4 characters, even though Luka is not out and we do not know about his numbers, I still think Sampo is the best option out of those 3 to use a unit to work alongside. Possibly, of course, you could use even 3 units. So I don't think you should use 4 dot units in a Kafka team. That's, I think, not the way how you should use her. I think the max, I think the usual is 2, and then 2 more defensive characters maybe, which could be like Silverwolf and Locha, for example, or any other defensive characters. But if you really want to, I think there's the possibility to use 3 offensive characters. So basically Serval, Sampo, and Kafka, or Sampo, Kafka, and Luka. I think these are like the possible team comps that you could use. But I definitely would recommend Sampo over the other 2 Nihility characters. And then we'll have to wait until more nihility dot characters are revealed in the future, and that will make Kafka better. Yeah, I think that's enough for the video today. I hope I could help you out with basically preparing for Kafka, or building a team with Kafka as soon as she is out. Yeah, subscribe to the channel to help me out with my 1,000 subscriber goal, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.